Well, good evening and welcome once again to the LBJ grasslands outside of Decatur, Texas. Tonight's exercise is a beam comparison of the CyanSky K3 Long-Throw Flashlight versus 4 other models. I was asked to review this light with a particular interest in how it compared against other Fenix models, since I have reviewed and in fact use a number of Fenix lights in search and rescue. Now, I will say I am not an advocate, an ambassador, an enthusiast, or a fanboy of any one particular brand. I use a lot of lights in search and rescue. Many of them are for just one single purpose. And as long as the light is suitable for that purpose and it has the reliability that I need in the field, I will use that light without the slightest regard to the manufacturer. So we have the K3 on the left, and then left to right we'll be looking at the Fenix TK20RV2, Cloud Defensive MCH-HC, Fenix TK30, and Fenix TK22UE. I'm going to first show you the modes of the K3 while there's still just a tiny bit of sunlight out. I like testing under imperfect conditions, and then we'll set up, show how these lights compare in a wilderness setting, and hopefully that will give you the information you need along with other beam shots you may have seen to make an informed buying decision. So before we begin, I want to point something out. I have to adjust my setup here to keep the box from blowing away in the wind. But I want to point out something I really like and give credit where credit is due. I really liked how the manufacturer put all the relevant information right on the box. You have the different modes, the peak lumen and peak candela for each mode, and then check that out. You have the burn down chart right there on the box. So all I can say is well done. So this is one of the tests I always like to run on a new light. Every light looks good in a perfectly dark environment. It's dark, but there's still just a sliver of sunlight in the western sky. The iPhone here is making the background look a little bit brighter than it really is. I'm looking out into a slight open area with some trees around it, and with the unaided eye I can't see anything back there. And so even though there's enough light to see around the road, around my truck, there's not enough light to see out into the trees. So I think this is an interesting test because the brightness of the beam is going to be affected some by the ambient light. So let's get this thing started, and that's actually the K3 in low, then medium. Let me pan it around in medium here. Then high. And of course everyone's favorite, turbo. All right, there we go. I'm going to let it get just a bit darker and then we'll do the beam comparisons. Okay, it's just barely dark enough to get this party started. Interesting environment tonight. Clear sky, the stars are out, the moon is out. We've got about a 46% moon tonight. I'm facing approximately southeast. So the moon is behind me and just to the right. It's Texas, it's summer, the wind is blowing. There's going to be a lot of dust in the air. I've got a road in front of me. In fact, my headlamp right now is on 2000 lumen spot, and with the unaided eye, I can see that there's a tree line out there, but I definitely can't get any detail. So what I'm going to do is get the K3 going here on the left, then turn the headlamp off, and then our first comparison is going to be with the Fenix TK20R V2. I'm going to bring that in from the right. Now, there's both a candela and a lumen difference here. I can tell pretty easily that the Fenix is illuminating a much wider area, but you get a much tighter, brighter beam from the K3. We are back, and you're looking at my headlamp right now. Once again, I'm going to get the K3 on, headlamp off, and then for comparison, the Cloud Defensive MCH-HC coming in from the right. A good 20,000 candela difference here between the two, and it really shows looking through the tree line. K3 on the left, Cloud Defensive on the right. Okay, I'm just starting with the K3 on right now, no headlamp. I'm going to bring in an LEP light for comparison, in this case the Fenix TK30. It's really almost not even a comparison. You're talking about apples and oranges in terms of the type of light, but I wanted you to see the beam comparison between the two. I think for general searches, I would prefer the K3, the TK30 being better suited after I've made, say, a thermal identification 500 or 600 yards downrange, and then I want to do a visual identification with a magnified optic. But there it is against an LEP light. Okay, K3 on the left, Fenix TK22 UE on the right. Interestingly, both of these lights have the same number of out the front peak lumens. However, there's a massive difference in peak candela. You can see the TK22 UE beam really looks like, honestly, just a regular old flashlight at that outer tree line. I get a ton more detail from the K3, and there's a massive difference in peak candela. So, you know, if you're kind of new to the flashlight industry, there's a real focus on lumens when you look at manufacturer's specs, but you really need to look at peak candela in addition to lumens to get the complete story. So again, here's two lights that have the exact same out the front lumens, same number of modes, almost identical form factor and weight, but radically different beams. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you've seen me out in the wilderness on foot, and you probably think that's, you know, what search and rescue is about. A lot of times it's this. I'm just rolling in my truck and I'm looking inside tree lines. And this is what I really think the K3 is most ideally suited for, and probably is going to be my primary use case because it carries so well, and it actually has a pretty long run time in turbo. In fact, in terms of heat, yeah, it does get hot, but the body heats up a lot less than the head. So I can roll along like this and just search through tree lines. And I wanted to show you this because I think this is a really interesting use case, at least for me personally, and it's probably different than some of the other beam shots that you've seen. And Distances here are probably anywhere from, you know, the 40 to 60 yard range, but what I like is that I can look deep inside the tree line because I've got a narrow, bright beam, but I'm not getting a lot of excess reflection that I would get from a much wider beam. Okay, one more test here. This is a really difficult one. We're looking over a section of Cottonwood Lake. I'm back up on the road. You can see the massive amount of stuff that is in the atmosphere. We're also looking back directly into the moonlight. So even though this light has theoretically 600 meters throw, from a practical standpoint, a lot is just going to depend on atmospheric conditions. But I wanted to do one last test looking out, you know, over many hundreds of yards in really, really bad conditions, just so that you could have every possible piece of information. And on that note, I hope you got some useful information. Here it's a pretty incredible looking light. I plan on putting it through some reliability testing over the summer, and then come winter, if I can get down near freezing or below, I plan on taking out on a multi-hour cold weather evaluation, and I'm really looking forward to posting the second part of this review. In the meantime, I really hope you got some useful information out of this. As always, thank you for your time, and thank you for watching the video.